And I'm currently on the phone with Michael. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview session. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
My name's Michael Cain. I've been a professional musician for about 24 years now. I've done gigs from the Minnesota Opera Chorus to playing in driveways. Went to college for classical and jazz, was a jazz musician out in Philadelphia for about 10 years. And now I play and write Southern rock songs here in Minneapolis with a band called Cain and Company.
Awesome. Very cool. We'll definitely get into some of that. But I always like to kind of touch base with the beginning. So give me some detail about, when you first encountered music, what was it about it that kind of drew you into it and made you want to pursue it?
I think the first real memory of music I have is my dad teaching me how to play guitar. He taught me like 12-bar blues and E. And we would stay up all night just like trading solos back and forth. And, of course, I'm 9, so I'm terrible. But the promise of creativity that came in music to me early was really what has kind of sustained my interest all these years. It's really a medium of expression. So it's how can I creatively express myself in this medium?
Okay, so tell me about, beginning that process. When did you begin to identify with that creative process and that would be an outlet for you?
I think I got my first electric guitar when I was 9 for Christmas. And I take it back, I was 12. And I remember the first song I ever wrote was I used the lyrics from a poem that my dad's girlfriend at the time wrote, and I set it to music. And I thought it was really cool that I could like make a song, even if the lyrics weren't my own. And that was kind of the beginning of discovering like music could be a tool that I could use to like make things. And I've kind of been off to the races ever since.
Okay. And so did that kind of set you down the pathway of being more of like a solo singer-songwriter type musician? Or did you kind of envision a larger project eventually?
I've always usually gotten the most out of playing in ensembles. So my high school band was a 5-piece. I've got a 5-piece now. Most of the compositions I played in jazz were always at least 5, usually 8 or 9. So I've always gravitated to the more like communal, like ensemble nature of music. Like, I do singer-songwriter stuff too, but I find that palette rather limiting. Like it's nice to have somebody on drums and bass and some sort of keyboard instrument and a couple of horns. Like you leave a lot on the table when it's just you and an acoustic guitar, which has its place for sure. But I tend to like to explore a little bit more complex palettes than that.
Okay, so tell me about, you mentioned you had a band in high school. So tell me about putting that together and what that was like. Was that the first iteration of your project as a whole, or was that kind of just, kids playing around in the garage?
Well, considering high school was like almost 30 years ago for me. It was kind of like an alt rock band. I played guitar mostly, but I also did some percussion in school. So we had a pop music recording class at Central High when I went there. And, it was just a bunch of musicians that took a class together, and we all, like the rappers, kind of got together and formed groups, and, the grunge kids, of which I was a part, formed some bands. So we had a bunch of guitar players and some singers, and like, well, no one's playing drums, so I guess I'm a drummer now. So, I started playing drums in kind of garage bands, and I had a few. I think by my sophomore year, I had moved over to guitar and had a band called Trilobite back in the day. And we recorded a little demo, and it was the first experience I had of like trying to write music in a group. And, like bands will often kind of like do it by committee. And, that never really worked for me because I always had a vision in my head of like, this is how this song goes. So I have since kind of gravitated more of like band leading myself and writing all the material ahead of time and finding musicians to play the music that I compose. But I think that was really the beginning, that high school band, of what the palette of rock and roll could do for me.
Okay. And do you think that experience is kind of what drew you to the realization that you worked better as kind of the band leader and director rather than just filling in an open position?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have like a natural leadership aptitude. So that kind of started to express itself in that band. And, you know, there's some guys that are just happy to be a part of the group and play their instruments. And that's great. For me, like I always had like a creative aspect to what I was trying to do. Like I wrote a lot of the songs that we had. And I, even now, like when I'm writing music, like I track everything in Logic, you know, and pass that on to the band. You know, and I want people to feel free to interpret what I have written, but I feel like if I can sketch everything out, at least it seems to be easier to communicate to other musicians when you have a whole piece rather than like just bringing a riff to practice and hoping your bandmates can somehow figure out from the little bit you have what exactly you're looking for.
Sure. So moving that forward, out of high school, did you kind of immediately take that kind of leadership role and then start putting the project together? Or was it kind of a few other iterations of projects that kind of led you to really kind of understand what it was you were working towards?
Well, college is really where I started studying music formally. You know, I had a couple of music lessons here and there, but I never really knew what music could do until I went to school. So I really fell in love with classical music and found jazz when I was an undergrad. So by the time I was leaving undergrad, I went to University of Wisconsin, River Falls. I had a jazz septet I was leading and like composing for. I had a couple of big band arrangements that I made. You know, I had really kind of fallen in love with jazz as an art form because I felt like the spontaneous compositional nature of soloing, like I always appreciated that, having, you know, been soloing my whole life. And there was just enough structure in jazz to like allow for that freedom, yet it still had some sort of compositional nature to it. So I would say like my band leading skills definitely started to mature in school.
Okay. And this might be an obvious question, but just kind of to put it out there, when you were in college working on and learning music, was that solely that was the dedication, or did you have like a out of school project that you were also working on?
I led a septet my junior and senior year that we played some gigs outside of school. But I would say for the most part, I was still learning how to compose. Like I spent a lot of time in the lab, you know, writing compositions, throwing compositions out, you know, bringing compositions to my teachers and having them look at it. And so I feel like that's where I really learned like how to write in a more sophisticated manner. I played in grunge bands and like there's some compositional element to that, but like really understanding how instruments work and how orchestration works and all that was really the focus of my undergraduate years.
Awesome. So let's kind of bring that forward again, post-college, and then kind of where you are now. What have the projects been involved in? And then kind of give me some detail about the projects that you're in now.
You know, I do a couple cover band gigs here and there. I'm happy to sub. I was a professional cover band musician out in Philadelphia for a long time. So that was fun when you're young, but I'm 44, man. I'm not trying to play Katy Perry for a living anymore. So these days, I've got a band called Cain and Company. We're a Southern rock flavored band. You know, it's kind of inspired by Blackberry Smoke, Allman Brothers, American Aquarium kind of vibes. And that's really been my main focus musically. So I'm writing the tunes and booking the gigs and, you know, good old fashioned band leading again.
Sure. Right where you belong. Perfect. So tell me about, you know, some of the moments throughout working on music, going to college for it, that have really stuck out to you, that keep you motivated to want to continue to participate in music.
I think it's really the feedback I get from audiences. Like it can be challenging as a musician because you never really know if what you're doing is any good. You know, like I like my songs, but like, does that mean like anybody's going to want to hear them? So I think I'm inspired by the fact that I can write music that people enjoy and they get something out of what is people I feel are willing to meet me halfway. Like I try to go out of my way to make things a little bit more compositionally complex than perhaps traditional songwriting would be. And we get a lot of value out of that. So I feel like I've found this happy medium of I can be creative and expressive in a way that makes sense to me, but is also accessible to audience members.
Okay, so it's mainly just, you know, drawing on what you kind of want out of yourself, and then also what you think the trajectory for your projects are that kind of keep you motivated to continue to get there.
Yeah, you know, I feel like the musicians really enjoy the music. I enjoy the music. people that come hear the music enjoy it. So it's like that's the three people that matter. So I feel like the vibes are good in that regard. So I feel like we're really onto something.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, where can people find your stuff and check you out or come see you?
We're on Instagram at Cain_co_official. Same address on YouTube. We recorded a show at KJ's Hideaway a couple months before they closed, RIP. So you can find us there. We're on Facebook as well. Our next show is on April 26th with Whiskey Burn in About a Boat at the Rock Bar on West 7th in St. Paul.
Awesome. Perfect. So I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the chance to put out their last word. So what's a message that you have that you think other people should hear?
There's this thing in the SEAL teams called embrace the suck. And I have gotten a lot out of that. I think that it can be, especially with AI on the rise and the difficulty of trying to make a buck in music, it can feel like you don't know why you're doing it. And I think the more we can embrace the uncertainty and for lack of a better word, the suck of it all, you begin to appreciate like the true nature of the art form. Not everybody's going to make a living playing music, and that's okay. I don't. I'm a software engineer for a living, but I still have an opportunity to participate in music in a way that's meaningful. And I think that's okay. And I think people should be willing to embrace that.